this for the platform of First Take, even though I said it on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Let me repeat it again to let everybody know I didn't stutter, okay? Black coaches called the black commentator to complain about a black superstar doing a podcast while his black head coach was on the hot seat before he ultimately lost the damn job. What does that have to do with white folks? Some things are none of your damn business.
Nothing.
It was a black on black thing, but you got other folks who will remain nameless working for other networks with their irrelevant ass selves, popping their junk, okay? And the fact of the matter is, it has absolutely positively nothing to do with that. It's about the fact that this situation ended up looking the way that it looks optically. And they were asking, why would LeBron James do that? What does that have to do with you and your white ass, Doug Gottlieb?
All right, guys, so this video right here is going to be absolutely amazing, okay? I could not wait to make a video about this when I heard Stephen A. Smith have an absolute meltdown, okay? A legendary meltdown. I'm not exaggerating here. This guy is losing his mind because a Fox Sports commentator, Doug Gottlieb, called out Stephen A. Smith as a race baiter, which is 100% true, okay? Stephen A. Smith is the biggest race baiter in sports, okay? He cannot analyze anything in sports without bringing up race, okay? He's like the Joy Reid of sports, right? His commentary is strictly race-based, okay? And he gave race-based commentary about the Los Angeles Lakers hiring JJ Redick. And, of course, the pro-blacks are upset about this because JJ Redick is a white guy and he doesn't have experience as a head coach in the NBA, but he was a good player and him and LeBron are friends, okay? It is clear and obvious that the reason why the dude was hired was because of network, okay? Network, he probably wasn't the most qualified guy, but that's not really on the Lakers management. That's on LeBron James, right? That is on LeBron, okay? But again, you know, these are the same people that have nothing to say about the biggest legacy admission into the NBA that we've ever seen, who is LeBron James' son, Bronny James. Again, all these people, again, are boohoo-whining and crying, hey, yeah, JJ Redick got the job. We can't believe they hired a white man. Because that's what they're upset about, right? They're upset that they hired a white guy. And again, LeBron James is the one responsible for it. Are silent on the legacy admission of Bronny James, who's probably going to get drafted, even though the guy, again, he should not be drafted, okay? He's just not that good. He's not NBA material. He did not inherit the genetics of his father, unfortunately, at least not enough in order to actually be an NBA player, okay? Nothing more than a role bench player at best, okay? At best, and that's kind of stretching it. So I'm just saying, you know, there's a whole lot of kind of hypocrisy here. They're mad at LeBron, who obviously pulled the strings on what the media sees as an unqualified individual or not as qualified as Darvin Ham, who, again, was on the hot seat trying to get the job, okay? And unfortunately, he lost the job. And you know that they're upset that he lost the job to a white guy because they made it racial, which is exactly what Stephen A. Smith did when he came out and basically reported that, well, some black coaches got in my ear, and they're upset with the fact that LeBron James had a podcast with JJ Redick as Darvin Ham was fighting for the job. And we know why Stephen A. made it racial is because their main issue is the fact that the guy is white, right? And underqualified according to them. And that really rubs them the wrong way. And Doug Gottlieb of Fox Sports decided to come out and to call Stephen A. Smith what he is, which is a race baiter for racializing an issue that, in my opinion, is clearly not racial, but he decided to do so by reporting on that.
What I can tell you is this. Numerous coaches, black coaches, called me expressing how they took issue with that podcast taking place. And I think you know enough to know that that's true. Some of them felt very salty about that. We certainly are not blaming JJ Redick.
Can I pause you on that? They were salty because he chose to do a podcast with a white guy or because it hurt Darvin Ham?
Because it hurt Darvin Ham.
Okay.
Because it hurt Darvin Ham.
Stephen A. Smith said in regards to JJ Redick, LeBron doing JJ Redick's podcast.
Oh, yeah, that was great. That he's heard from other coaches, namely black coaches that have an issue with it.
Yeah. Let me state this really, really carefully, okay? Stephen A. Smith is a race baiter, okay? He is disgraceful saying that on national TV. Disgraceful. So JJ Redick and LeBron James are clearly friends. They have a relationship. They have mutual respect for one another. The only one who's making it out to be a racial thing is Stephen A. Smith, which he is creating this. This is honestly pure evil. That's what bad people do. It's what bad people do. You know, Stephen A. Smith had COVID really, really bad, was in the hospital. I texted him 3 or 4 times wishing him well because I'm a good human being. I believe he has switched over. Whatever he thinks has been done to him or to black people, like this is just as bad as the perception that President Trump stokes the white nationalist flame. Same thing. There's no difference. There's no difference. None. Making it out to be somehow that like a racial thing. How could you do a podcast with JJ Redick? Because they're friends and he respects him.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Okay, now this is a hilarious story to me for multiple reasons, because I've been telling you guys for the longest time about how Stephen A. Smith is quite literally controlled. Okay, he's controlled by his woke handlers who get into his ear to make him say woke talking points when, for example, a white guy gets hired for head coach and you have a bunch of black people that are upset. Stephen A. Smith has to come out here and do the tap dance and start playing the race card. He did this back when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were responsible for Steve Nash, I believe, getting hired as head coach of the Nets. And it wasn't some black dude. And Stephen A. Smith came out and said, yeah, people got in my ear and told me, hey, I need to speak up about the fact that a black head coach wasn't hired, and the fact that Kyrie and Kevin Durant have this power to put a black head coach in this job, in this seat, and they didn't do it, right? And he got frustrated because he was like, oh, well, you guys expect me to be so pro-black, but when it comes time for you guys to be pro-black, you're not pro-black, right? Which is just hilarious to me, okay? So again, he's once again admitting that, yes, when the race hustlers say jump, I say how high, okay, because I am controlled, right? He's saying that, well, it's not about JJ Redick being white, except it is about JJ Redick being white, because the whole point is that, well, LeBron James undermined a black head coach because he decided to do this podcast with a white guy who would soon be the future head coach of the Lakers, okay, which, again, we all know that LeBron James is the one that made that decision. He's running that, okay, and Stephen A. Smith didn't have to racialize it. He could have just said, well, I have some coaches that have called me up and said that, well, they don't like the fact that a NBA coach was undermined by a player as he's trying to get the job. He could have completely gave this take in a race-neutral way, but he just decided not to, okay? He decided to racialize it because it's racial. They have an issue with a black head coach being undermined so that a white guy can get a job, right? They don't like that, okay? This is what they don't like. And part of the reason why you know this is because if JJ Redick was a black guy, then nobody would have had an issue, right? Nobody would have come out here and said, well, we don't like the fact that LeBron James undermined a black man to help another black man get a job, right? No, it only is an issue because JJ Redick is white. If he wasn't white, then they wouldn't have a problem with it. They wouldn't care. And you know the sad part about this, that race hustlers like Stephen A. Smith and others don't realize when it comes to racializing situations like this that aren't racial, is that you actually cheapen the criticism of the hire, okay? Because again, if Stephen A. would have just kept this race neutral, like he could have, then it would have make it seem more legitimate. Like, oh, okay, head coaches, yeah, they're upset with this hire. They think that LeBron James and what he did to undermine the head coach that was fighting for his job, yeah, we think that was wrong. It would have actually made it seem more legit, right? People would have actually focused on, okay, did LeBron James actually do that in a way that was respectful of a coach fighting for his job? Did LeBron James legitimately undermine this coach? That's what the conversation would have been about. It would have been about substance, which would actually get you somewhere, right? Because people would say, okay, this is a legitimate thing to talk about. But when you try to say, well, it's racial, now people can default to, well, you guys are just hating because JJ Redick is white, right? Which, again, to me seems to be the issue. Again, it takes away the substance. It cheapens the criticism of the situation when you throw race in there. But again, these people are so dumb, okay? They're so incredibly stupid that they don't even realize that they're working against themselves when they unnecessarily use the race card, right? In situations that have nothing to do with race. So now Stephen A. Smith is upset. He's going to lose his mind, absolutely lose it, over Doug Gottlieb, who's white, calling him out for being a race baiter, which he is. So without further ado, let's get into it.
But this guy goes on his show on Thursday accusing me of being a race baiter for reporting that black NBA coaches condemned JJ Redick's podcast with LeBron James. But before I go any further, let me quote what Doug Gottlieb said. Quote, Stephen A. Smith, remember, this is him bringing up my name, y'all. He started this. Stephen A. Smith is a race baiter. He is disgraceful, saying that on national television. Disgraceful. JJ Redick and LeBron James are clearly friends. They have a relationship. They have mutual respect for one another. The only one who's making it out to be a racial thing is Stephen A. Smith. He is creating this. This is honestly pure evil. That's what bad people do. So I'm a bad person now. This is what bad people do. Oh, he doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. This is just as bad as the perception that President Trump stokes the white nationalist flame. Same thing. There's no difference. No difference. None. So I want y'all to understand the magnitude of what Doug Gottlieb just said. Doug Gottlieb just compared my saying that black coaches who have called me had a problem with the podcast, and I'll get into that in a second. But Doug Gottlieb is comparing that and equating that to Donald Trump and white nationalists. So when the mayhem took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, and a young lady was killed, and we had folks out there marching and white supremacists making themselves conspicuous, and Donald Trump goes over the airwaves and say, there were good and bad people on both sides. That's the equivalent of this?
Yeah, so here we have a so-called journalist repeating lies that have been debunked, right, multiple times about the whole both sides nonsense in Charlottesville, okay? Basically trying to say that Trump stokes white nationalists, which again is the whole point that Doug Gottlieb is making here, right? Which is that this is ridiculous, right? Your race baiting is just as ridiculous as the media trying to say that, well, Trump, again, stokes the flames of white nationalism in this country, right? It's just stupid, right? And Stephen A. Smith, again, is kind of confirming this point because he is pushing this narrative that has been debunked. Even left-wing fact checker Snopes debunked this, right? They came out and admitted the truth. They said, yeah, it is false to say that Trump called neo-Nazis white supremacists very fine people, okay? He explicitly condemned them in his same speech. And again, this is false. Again, it's crazy how it takes, almost 5, 6, 7, 8 years to get the truth from the liberal media? It's insane. It's insane.
When there was riots in the streets during the whole social justice movement, and Donald Trump was surrounded by men in the military, walking over to do a prop, I believe it was a Bible in his hand. That equates to me talking about LeBron James.
Well, yeah, because the point that Doug Gottlieb is making is that you're putting your own spin on it to stoke hate and division, which is what the media did with Trump, right? I think that Doug Gottlieb's point is actually going over Stephen A. Smith's head. He's so mad about the truth being told about his agenda that he doesn't even understand the core argument that's being made by Doug Gottlieb, which is that, yes, you are stoking hate and division when you come out here and you try to make a situation racial when it's not racial, the same way that the media does with Trump, right? They try to make everything that Trump does racial, right? Even though it's not, okay? That is what he's saying. That's the point. I don't think Stephen A. Smith is getting this.
Dare I say, only somebody who thinks about white nationalists would say something like that, like what Doug Gottlieb said. But I won't go there because I don't know Doug Gottlieb like that. And quite frankly, I don't want to know him. So I'm not going to accuse him of being anything. I'm going to stick to what exactly he said. First things first. Doug Gottlieb was a hell of a basketball player, which I was not. Doug Gottlieb was a guy, if I remember correctly, led the nation in assists. Brother had game. He's now the coach, the head basketball coach at Wisconsin Green Bay. Wish him nothing but the best. I'm not rooting against him. We're going to stick to his commentary, his comments right now. Black coaches who called me, all of them didn't call me, about 5 or 6 of them called. Their whole attitude, nobody had a single problem against JJ Redick. Nobody questioned LeBron James and JJ Redick's friendship. What they had a problem with is that the timing of the podcast undermined Darvin Ham, who was on the hot seat. And they were asking, why would LeBron James do that? What does that have to do with you and your white ass, Doug Gottlieb?
Now imagine if Doug Gottlieb had said the same thing about Stephen A. Smith and basically said, what does anything that white people are involved in have to do with your black ass, Stephen A? Could you imagine, bro? Could you imagine if a white guy said in response to a black person commentating on white issues, right? What does your black ass got to do with this? These people would be losing it, okay? They will be losing. There will be pitchforks, riots, protests. They'll be boo-hoo, whining, crying in the media. Oh, this guy is a racist, demanding that he be fired. But Stephen A. Smith is allowed to basically say, well, you're white, you can't comment on this. Right? Even though this is sports, right? It certainly is within the realm of what Doug Gottlieb does for a living, which is to commentate on sports and sporting events. So to say that because it is a situation involving you, black head coaches LeBron James and JJ Redick, who happens to be white, by the way, well, you can't comment on this because you're white. This is essentially what he's saying. What does that have to do with your white ass? Wow. Wow. But again, Stephen A is so dumb that he doesn't even realize that he's the one that made it racial by mentioning the race of the coaches. He could have gave that statement. He could have reported that without race at all. But he chose to input race because he's trying to make a racial point. Right? That is what he's doing. And he's mad because he's getting called out for it. And now he's pretending as if Doug Gottlieb is out of his lane for calling out Stephen A for doing what Stephen A always does when a white head coach gets hired over a black guy. They come out here and they start boohoo, whining, and crying, racism and bigotry, right? They complain about it, okay? They pretend like black head coaches don't get opportunities and yada, yada, yada. This is what they do every single time, and people are sick of it, man. They're sick of it to the point where they're like, you know what? We're not going to hold back anymore. We're going to call you what you are, right? You're a race baiter, right? And I don't blame Doug Gottlieb, right? This is what white people should be doing, right? They should be calling these people out, saying exactly what they are when they do it, because they do it all the time.
Black coaches called the black commentator about the black athlete that they had a problem with because they felt he was undermining the black coach.
So again, it's racial, right? Which again is the point that Doug Gottlieb is making, is that Stephen A. Smith bought at this point because he wanted to racialize a situation that's not racial. JJ Redick got the job because he's friends with LeBron James. It is what it is, right? That's the whole point. It ain't really got anything to do with race, but you talking about black head coaches being upset with it, again, is you trying to racialize the situation, right? Again, I think that Stephen A. Smith is so angry that he doesn't actually really understand the argument that is being put forth here from Doug Gottlieb. Or maybe he does. He just doesn't want to really engage with it directly Okay, he wants to pull the race card and basically try to say that Doug Gottlieb can't comment on it because he's white, because he actually really doesn't have a rebuttal for the accusation from Doug Gottlieb, which is that you're race baiting. You made it racial on purpose because you're mad that the Lakers hired a white head coach over a black guy, right? This is what he actually really wants to say. This is what Stephen A. wants to say. This is what all the coaches are mad about, but they can't actually really say it directly. So this is an indirect way of saying it, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it.
Nobody said anything about JJ Redick. What does it have to do with you? Now, this is the same Doug Gottlieb who 2 years ago went after my other good friend, Nick Wright, for Fox Sports, his colleague there, 2 years ago, because Nick was in favor of NIL and the change it was facilitating, because the relatively white institutional establishments in college sports were taking advantage of black athletes, primarily in the sport of basketball and football. Doug Gottlieb took exception to that and accused Nick Wright of engaging in fake racism.
Well, he was, right? He's correct, okay? Again, you can talk about college athletes being exploited without racializing it, right? You don't have to say, well, these predominantly white institutions are taking advantage of these black athletes as if it's slavery, right? This is what they do to strengthen their argument when, again, the argument in and of itself for college players being paid was strong enough without racializing it, right? But they racialize it because, again, they can't argue without race, right? This is impossible for them to do, okay? So this is why they pulled a race card. Yeah, making it a race thing was totally unnecessary because the argument for athletes getting paid, considering how much money they generate and the fact that they subsidize a lot of the sports that don't make money. I'm talking specifically about football players, basketball players, baseball players, you know, the big money athletes subsidizing the leagues, the sports in college that don't make money. Yeah, I think that it actually makes sense, right? That argument stands on its own 2 feet without putting in race. But these people put in race because they don't know how to argue without race. And Doug Gottlieb correctly calls that out, right? I mean, you know, again, these people get mad when their hustle gets exposed, right? When white people stand up and say, no, we're not just going to allow you to do this. We're going to call it out for what it is. They're losing their minds, right? They can't stand it.
So you the expert on racism now. That's who Doug Gottlieb is. Really? You? Really?
I mean, he's just as qualified to talk about it as you, Stephen A., right? Just because you're black, that doesn't make you an expert. You're not the only one that has a monopoly on talking about race. But see, again, this is what these people think. White folks, stay out of racial conversations. Even though you're being demonized, stay out of it, right? You can't push back against it, okay? You can't push back against us accusing you of being racist, right? This is what they're saying. This is what they think.
I mean, you gotta be kidding me. So he misquoted me. He misrepresented and lacked context or didn't provide context to what I was saying. Once again, no issue with JJ Redick. No issue with the podcast. No issue really with LeBron James doing the podcast with JJ Redick if it were not at a time when Darvin Ham was on the hot seat. That's all.
Well, again, see, this is why I try to tell you, Stephen A. is missing the whole point, right? He's missed the whole point because Doug Gottlieb did not take your comments out of context because his point was that you racialized the issue. That was the point, right? For the purposes of, again, playing the race card, trying to make it seem like some form of racism, okay, or that a black head coach was essentially wronged in favor of a white coach. And again, it's a racial situation. Stephen A. admitted that, yeah, that was the problem, right? That a black head coach was undermined. He literally admitted that. And that's what Doug Gottlieb was talking about, right? So to say that Doug Gottlieb took your comments out of context is just silly because he didn't, right? He spoke on you making something racial that's not racial. But again, because Stephen A. can't actually push back against that because he knows that's what he did, he has to basically say, well, you're white, so therefore you shouldn't speak on this, right? Don't talk about this because you're white, okay? Keep your white ass out of black business. I'm just saying, this is what he's saying. And this is one of the more epic meltdowns from Stephen A. Smith because he finally got called out by a white person on the race hustle that he pushes every day on Woke Take with Shannon Sharp. So to me, I just find it hilarious because this is the same guy that will get his black card revoked with the quickness whenever he falls out of line, right, by these same people that he's trying to please so much. Again, it's just hilarious. He's one of the most pathetic individuals in the media, right? Stephen A. Smith, he's the gift that keeps on giving. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.